Hello and welcome back to our latest Regcast. My name's Tim Phillips from the Register, and today we're talking about working smarter, not harder. Now, you know, I'm not particularly smart and I don't work hard, so does that mean what? Half of that's going to be relevant to me? Anyway, to help us today on our Regcast, we have from Microsoft, we have Pete King. Pete, welcome to the studio.
Thanks, Tim. It's good to be with you.
Now, Pete, you were showing us your new Windows smartphone when we were out before. Do you use it at the urinal like the guy in the advert does?
Well, you never know. It has to be said. It's got speakerphone very simply on it now, so maybe I can just leave it on the sink and turn it upside down and carry on with my conference call.
I wasn't expecting quite that much detail. It's a vivid image. And also from our old mates, Freeform Dynamics. Dale, I'm not even going to ask you where you use your smartphone. You're a smartphone man as well, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, long-time smartphone user. Yeah, it's quite interesting, actually. It's quite a lively area at the moment, and probably one of the biggest, most frequent questions we get, actually, from our clients is, what should we be doing about smartphones? Because everyone's just bringing them into the business, whether IT wants them or not.
Well, one thing is you switch them off when you're on a Regcast, yeah? You haven't got them on, you don't know these days. People have no discipline. Okay, so we need to tell you, first of all, before we get going, for any of you who haven't used our interface before, this is how you do it. There's, as you can see, there's tabs for the bios of the presenters today, so you can see why we invited them. You can download the presentation, share it with your mates, or just read it in bed later tonight. The most important thing is the questions tab. Ask us questions, because there's no point in complaining afterwards that we didn't talk about the thing you wanted to talk about if you didn't bother to ask us to talk about it. Yeah, makes sense. There's also a thing to give us feedback afterwards, because here at the Reg we do more of what you want, less of what you don't want, unlike those other webinar providers. Don't mention them, do we? Okay, kicking us off, Dale, you need to kick us off. On today's Regcast, we're looking at productivity, which is it's a big and amorphous area. And we're also talking about, and it covers lots of different things. It covers how individuals behave and how organisations behave and how things we wish didn't happen and things we wish did. It's a little bit vague, isn't it? Can you define what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, it's one of those words that, I mean, we all use the word productivity. We're all on the receiving end of people telling us we need to be more productive and giving us advice on how to be more productive. But sometimes it can lose a bit of precision. It does get a bit woolly. So at the risk of stating the bleeding obvious, we've got a definition here. Well, a couple of definitions here, actually. Cause
you're giving us two. That's
two, exactly. Yeah, two for the price of one. So one way of looking at it is to focus on personal productivity, and that's really about looking at the results that we produce as individuals divided by the number of hours worked. It's not rocket science. I'm sorry if that is a bit obvious, but it's worth bearing that in mind. The thing that's different, though, is when you look at it through more of a business lens, it's really about sort of the value created against the total amount of resources used. So that's not just individuals, that's kind of how much you consume.
I'm going to say a resource is a person.
A resource could be a person, it could be, I mean, if a person is working inefficiently, they could be consuming all kinds of other resources that using more materials than they should do, for example, to get a job done. So the second one is a bit of a broader definition. And the reason it's important is because you need to be clear about the kind of lens that you're looking through when you're talking about productivity. So on the left-hand side of the chart that we have here, that's really where that first definition fits in, because it's very much about individuals. How productive is an individual? What are they producing in a given working day, etc., in terms of value to the business. On the right-hand side, it's about organisational efficiency. So that's how well is the company doing, given how much it's expending on stuff. Now, an interesting example would be someone, for instance, on the left. You could spend a lot of time getting people to, or looking at how gathering all the information together to fill out a particular form in a particular department could be done much more effectively and reduce the time from 2 hours to half an hour, say. And that's great from a personal productivity point of view on the left. But actually, when you look at it from the right-hand side, in terms of organisational productivity, why the hell is that person filling out the form when it's already completed in an automated way over in this other department? So the right-hand side is all about zooming out a little bit and saying, well, let's not focus too much on the trees. Let's zoom out and have understand the wood and how everything hangs together across different departments and functions.
I'm going to bring you in here on this because there'll be some people thinking, I'm guessing, there'll be some people thinking, why we got Microsoft in? Because they've been making productivity software for, 25 years now. Does this mean that the fact we're still talking about this, does this mean it basically hasn't worked?
No, what it means for me is that the definition of what being productive is, both as a business and being as a user, continually changes, and technology is a part of that, and technology is an enabler to provide better productivity. But it is down to an organisation to embrace change in all facets of their working environment, including technology. So just because technology is there and you don't embrace it doesn't mean to say that you are going to be the most productive. You need to find out what's going to work for your organisation and provide a flexible working environment within the constraints you're trying to offer for compliance and security and all the things that you need to enable your workforce to choose their best working style. It's about that mix, and that's what we've done over time, is iterate that environment to give people more choice about how they work.
One thing as well I want to clear up is that we joked about it at the beginning, the joke about that sort of using your smartphone, everywhere, never stopping, is because some companies have become productivity bullies. I mean, that's the problem with technology, is it's made us never away from work. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we're talking about today, is it? We're not talking about how you can be at work all the time.
Exactly that, and for me, I very much subscribe to Dale's view of the two different versions of, or different definition of productivity. And the one we all think about is, if I make my organisation 1% more efficient, and I'm a 3,000 person organisation, that's kind of 30 more people I've got. That's the kind of wrong way for me to look at it from a user perspective. It's how do I enable you to be better and more productive in the role that I'm asking you to do? And perhaps the goal is you get more thinking time. So therefore the quality of the output that you produce is better, and you can opt in or opt out into communications or information that you either want to see or that you don't. Whereas today, many organisations are literally swamped by information through email, through sharing sites or whatever they choose to use, and then that don't give the user the ability to either opt in or opt out to those streams.
Okay, so not doing stuff in the future that you don't need to do is going to be a big thing. I'm interested in the path to that, because that's quite a difficult one, isn't it? So Dale, I know you've got some slides about what this actually means in more detail and the problems that people have at the moment.
Yeah, I think Pete was sort of alluding to the way personal technology can help or hinder by just making you much more accessible and therefore getting swamped by stuff. I think, though, it's important to understand that there are some things going on at more of a sort of organisational level that are important. I mean, here we've just got the kind of stuff that we all as individuals kind of moan to one degree or another about this, the fact that we've got a huge amount of information that's hitting us all the time. This is a bit of a cliche, but it is true. Yeah. It comes through time and time again whenever we go and talk.
I can relate. The little guy in the middle even looks a little bit like me, doesn't he?
I didn't think of that.
Like you didn't. Okay, but I mean, these are things that people relate to, but it's also straightforward. This is not a revelation, Dale.
No, it's not a revelation. But what it does mean is that you look at what's behind some of that stuff. It's not about just giving someone a smartphone or giving someone access from their home office or whatever. There are some infrastructural things behind the scenes that need fixing. If your information's all over the place, you've got the same stuff in different forms in 5 or 6 different databases, and someone needs to get hold of that to do their job, to fill out that form maybe that we talked about earlier on, then that's not something that you can solve by just personal technology. You have to stand back and understand the root of some of these problems. And similarly with communication, I mean, as you look at a lot of the reason why, most inboxes, if you look at what comes into your inbox, you'll find there's a lot of requests there from people asking you for something that maybe you sent to them 2 weeks ago that they can't find, or asking you for information that if only they knew that it existed in that particular database or whatever, or that system on the internet, then they wouldn't be bothering you with that. So all of this is about having things clear and accessible, as well as allowing people to communicate between each other more effectively.
And I think the thing that's important on top of that for me is to enable you to find each other in the first place. I mean, how much time do we waste as individuals in an organisation of size trying to find the person who's the expert in, or the person who's responsible for creating this particular document that you happen to find on the corporate intranet? If there was some kind of identity associated with that, or you had some way of searching in your organisation for flexible things around expertise or projects people work on, you can actually get to that point to actually find the person that would help you be more productive. Yeah. So there are different ways of looking at it, even if you don't know the people to start with.
A lot of it is about visibility of stuff, whether it's people, information, so you can actually grab what you need or communicate with who you need to as efficiently as possible. So that's why I'm always a bit sceptical when people come along with the latest gadget and say this is going to fix your productivity problems, because generally speaking it's not.
Well, part of that responsibility for that lies with the industry, hasn't it? Because it has overpromised.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of that, and I think it is important to. It's not that these individual products, gadgets, technology, all the kind of things we're talking about don't have a place. It's just not to think of them all in isolation. Think about the problem in its entirety. And that's not to say that this is some huge complex thing. I mean, it's not rocket science what the problem is, but it is too simplistic to say that it can be solved by this magic bullet technology or that magic bullet technology or whatever.
Okay, let's have a look at the organisational ones here. That's your next slide.
Yeah, I think.
There we go. It'll pop
delay
up.
Here.
It'll pop up on yours.
Technologies.
Yeah. They can see it. They can see it, and you know what's on it.
I mean, the stuff I put on here is actually, it just sort of reinforces the organisational view. Really, we did a research study with the register audience probably about 18 months ago, I think it was, looking at BPM, business process management, which is a pretty dry topic. But one of the things that came out of that, again, it's kind of stating the bleeding obvious, but you need to kind of start here before you can actually go and tackle the problem. The fact that, for instance, business processes, getting stuff done in the organisation, tends to usually involve multiple departments and functions. It's pretty obvious when you say it, but it's also obvious when you go and ask people that a lot of the handoffs between departments, the way departments do the same or similar things in totally different ways, means that there's an awful lot of unnecessary work done. So, I mean, your point earlier on, Tim, about stopping doing some of the things that we're doing is part of that whole thing. The other thing is just systems. Lots of business processes involve multiple systems, and you end up quite often entering the same information multiple times, or trying to reconcile things between systems. And that's not just systems, Department A has a system, Department B has a system. Even some of the corporate systems are not particularly well integrated. And that means that there's just an awful lot of manual processing goes on out there. Quite a lot of room for more automation. It's surprising, isn't it? I mean, what year are we in? And we're still here with fragmented systems all over the place.
I'm just laughing because now you're talking about manual processes. I see a comment in and said, "Why does the guy from Microsoft have a pen and paper and we've got laptops?" There's two things about that. It's not all about technology. And the second thing is, these aren't really laptops. They're studio laptops. They're actually made of cardboard. But back to this. Now, if you're in the IT department, Dale, what you've got is people coming down from the top and talking to you about these organisational productivity challenges, saying, we want this. And then you go to your users and they're complaining about the things that we talked about on the last slide, their individual problems, like, there's too much stuff, I ain't got enough time, I can't do these sort of things. Can you keep everybody happy?
It's all a trade-off, isn't it? I mean, it's
that's
a case
no, isn't it? It's a trade-off.
I'm
going to have to press you on this.
Yeah. I think the technology nowadays does enable some things to be done a little differently. So this idea that you were talking about earlier on of not doing things, ignoring things. So whether it's simple mechanisms like being able to filter all that information that's coming in, so you can easily identify what's important and what's not. Those sorts of things really do help. But I think the win-win, to use that horrible management consulting phrase that that comes about
you
quite
never
often.
used to talk like this.
I know.
Yeah, okay, it's okay. We'll let you off on this one. Yeah. Sorry.
Where the balance comes from quite often is someone who's working a particular. I mean, it's pretty obvious stuff. If someone's working a 14, 16-hour day, the average productivity within any given hour is going to be lower than someone working an 8-hour day. Mm-hmm. Just tiredness, stress, the whole bit. And so actually, there is a good balance there to be achieved by helping people get their own working style under control. You can actually, in net terms, increase their output, and that, if you get the balance right, there's actually a good payback for both the individual and the company.
Who defines, Pete, you take this one, who defines working style then? Who makes this happen?
There's two facets to me, and I'll come back very quickly to your previous question. Can you make everybody happy? The answer is no, you can't. But you can actually make everybody happier. And that's about a two-way process of the organisation making choices for the individual to say, I will allow you to work in a varying amount of styles from different locations in different ways. So I will decide what you get access to, when you get access to it, and on what you get access to it on. That's a very pragmatic approach. Where are you? Are you in a Starbucks somewhere having a coffee and on public Wi-Fi? I'm probably not going to let you get to our corporate finance system, but maybe I'll let you read your email, or maybe I'll let you collaborate on a PowerPoint presentation. So certainly corporately, we have to decide to let people people within an organisation make more choices. But ultimately, it's down to the end user, if those decisions are made, to embrace their working style and to decide what they're going to opt into and what they're going to opt out to. Conversation we were having before the start of this was around, what does opt out look like? Well, it can be as simple as in an email scenario today, deciding to ignore a conversation. We've all seen those conversations go out, or emails go out to a distribution list that goes to absolutely everybody, and then the 400 mails that come from everybody else that say, please stop replying all to this, and they become pervasive around the organisation. Just opt out. Just say ignore. You come back into the office and you have a whole mail thread that's gone on for 3 weeks while you've been out travelling around the world or you've been on holiday. Clean up the conversation, take it to the net new information that's in those mails and ignore all the rest of the stuff. But if we don't provide those environments for our people to make the choices, they can't make the choices. But ultimately, working style is a user's choice.
Okay, there's an anxiety about missing stuff, both from the organisation's point of view and the individual's point of view. We don't like to think that we're outside of something that's going on and we don't know about it, so we end up not ignoring stuff. The organisation likes to think that everyone wants to be involved in things, so it just chucks people into these sort of projects which they have no role in. This, we're saying, is compounding the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I entirely agree that it should be left to the individual to figure out how they work sometimes, because whilst it's nice to, the notion of individuals having choice and, fitting around their own lifestyle, etc., that just the nature of some individuals is if you let them, they will work stupidly long hours, and they will sit there on the end of their mobile device when they should be eating dinner or playing with the kids or whatever, listening to that bing on their inbox and replying immediately. I mean, people will do that. So I do think a big part of this whole thing is helping people to come to terms and control the kind of technology that is being thrust on them.
You see, this is a lovely idea, and it comes up again and again when you sort of professional productivity people, I'm categorising you now, talk about this sort of thing. And there's a lot of people that are watching this are thinking, yeah, that's great, but who's actually going to tell me not to do less work? And as you can see from your slide here at the bottom of it, that thing about reducing costs, saving money, that translates in management's head into let's keep them working until 11 o'clock at night.
But that's an illusion, isn't it? I mean, it's just because someone is replying to an email at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night doesn't mean they're being productive. That email was, the person that sent that email probably didn't even expect an answer till the following morning. And all that's happening is you've got someone now who's on the clock for 16 hours a day, goes to sleep dreaming about work, is up in the morning totally knackered, and their productivity is completely shot to pieces. I'm deliberately painting an extreme picture there, but you do come across individuals like that. As someone who's run various teams, I've actually had to say to people on occasions, why are you answering this email at 8 o'clock in the evening? Clock off, mate. Go away, have a life. And sometimes you have to do that. So I think it's incumbent on anyone running a team, particularly, to just be a little bit sensible about what does make sense.
So I think for me that we're in danger here of getting quite ethereal about the whole piece of productivity, and we're talking quite a lot about culture here. And certainly within an organisation, there is an organisation sets its own culture. It kind of just happens, whether it's a conscious or an unconscious decision. For me, I would choose not to work in an organisation that had a very defined work style. I work the way I want to work, and people have very different work styles. So as an organisation, I think there are some things you need to do culturally to help people embrace differences in technology, differences in work styles, differences in people. But at the end of the day, only the individual can solve for that, and only your culture within your organisation can help them do it. I think the biggest challenge that we have is for organisations today that don't maybe have an environment that supports being productive and making choices, but still having the culture that expects you to be on top of everything. And that's the worst of both worlds for me. I'm not providing you the tool set to enable you to make choice, and I'm not giving you ability to opt out of not doing these things. That seems to me a really poor equation. That the better outcome is, sure, we all have to make cultural changes, but life gets ever harder, not easier. Let's enable people to have those varying choices within their organisation.
See, here's an interesting comment that's just come in. It's relevant to that. And it's saying, so technology is a source of efficiency, but it's Brad. He's saying, is there a problem where you have your IT department techies who are trying to use impose a technology to try and solve a business problem when they don't really understand the business problem because they don't work in that business unit? And or is this just my skewed perspective? It's a Brad suffering on the back of this.
I'll take that if that's all right with you, Tim. I think Brad raises a really interesting point, and I know in some slides coming up that Dale looks into this. We get some perspective around IT's view on where productivity or collaboration is important. It's never more important that the deliverers of our IT infrastructure in a business understands the business, because a business now has more choices that it can make to serve its own needs. And I think that's where even more tension comes into the equation, where we don't partner well around the business for business needs and kind of IT direction. So business users go off and make their own choices, which then become incredibly hard to reintegrate back into the strategy. So it is about getting that communications right, and it is about building a platform that goes forward, that embraces what the business direction is wholly, and gives you a chance to actually have a stake in what the IT direction is.
See, what does that actually mean, either of you? What does that actually mean, building a platform? How do we do that? How do we solve that problem? Dale?
Well, put the platform concept to one side for a second. I've had some really interesting conversations with people who've been trying to figure out how to deal with people making their own choices in the workplace, whether it be bringing smartphones in or signing up to web services or whatever it happens to be. And IT, I think, does have an interesting position here in this whole thing, because IT tends to have a view across most of what goes on, albeit looking through a technology lens. It can actually see some of the activity that's taking place on the network, which is a good indicator of how people are using technology or services or whatever. And someone was saying to me the way they deal with this in their organisation, and they've spent a lot of time thinking about how to get on top of this, is watch what users are doing. Whether you do that through network monitoring tools or whether you do it through just observation or having people out in the business and just talking to people, it doesn't really matter. Watch what people are doing. You'd be surprised how often you see a flurry of activity around a particular web service or some technology or whatever that just fizzles out. It's a fad, it's a fashion, it comes and goes. So point number one is don't get too hung up about things that happen, even if they might look a little bit, non-corporate. Just see what happens for a while. But there will be occasions when that activity solidifies, and if it solidifies around something, maybe public service instant messaging, for instance, you may decide that, well, actually, that's inherently not secure enough for us, or it's going to cause us compliance problems. So you might elect to give them the equivalent of that, but
corporatize it.
Corporatize it, yeah. But there are things that they start using, and you might think, well, that's fine, actually. Yeah, we can just put our arms around that, give it a little bit of support, give it, just make sure that we've got some policies and procedures around it, and we're fine from a security and compliance perspective, for instance. But the point being that visibility is quite an important thing that's going on. The other thing is, I think IT is able to spot something that's going on over here and say, well, actually, I've seen similar patterns or requirements over here, in a way that people in specific departments quite often don't see. And that's an opportunity for getting some sort of cross-fertilization. Coming back to your infrastructure question, then that provides opportunities to say, okay, well, rather than deal with that particular situation over here, let's put something in place which is a bit more horizontal that can be used here, here, and here. Got it.
Let's have a look at some of those things you put in place, actually. This is, Pete, this is your slide that we've got here.
Sure.
Tell me, there's modern productivity, you've called it, as opposed to sort of old productivity.
Yeah, I thought I'd take the chance to try and redefine the term within this webinar, mainly because Dale in his introduction has given us a couple of definitions of productivity. I'm sure many of the listeners and viewers on the webinar have their own definition of what productivity means to them. And it's based on, in many ways, what you've used historically in your entire life as a working person. And the problem is with organisations, we have a varying degree of technology and cultural change within our organisation. So what I thought I'd try and do is define what modern productivity means. Modern productivity isn't enabling me to write a Word document or author a spreadsheet of some description or create a presentation. That's just a task. That's authoring. That's not productivity. For me, productivity is about a collaboration between users and the organisation. So firstly, I have a choice about how I deliver my technology today. Do I provide it from within my organisation to my organisation, i.e. in my data centre serving my organisation directly? Do I consume wholly from a cloud type environment for some workloads, or do I have some kind of hybrid effect for that? So that's a big choice, and that's a company choice. That's not a user choice. So the first thing around productivity is how are you going to serve the community you're trying to serve, and what then enables you to keep the most current. That's one choice. Productivity from a user perspective is, with the support of the organisation, what should I be able to get access from, depending on what device I'm on and where I'm on. And so that's where the PC, phone and browser piece comes in. So I just have my phone with me today. I'm travelling on the train. What should I be able to do? Should I be able to take part in my team meeting, which I've actually got immediately after this? And I will be able to, just with my phone, watching the PowerPoint presentation and listening to the audio and partaking in the audio conversation, sitting in a room in an office down the road. Yeah, I can do that. I just have access to a browser. Yeah, I should be able to do what I need to do. Or I have my full PC with me. I should be able to do that. And then it's about workloads that sit within that space. So what does unified communication mean for you and your organisation? Well, for me it means I've got a calendar appointment in my phone that I click a button on, I click a link on, and instantly I'm into a web conference directly on my phone. That's unified collaboration or unified communications for me. I can instant message people. I can talk to them very easily, and it doesn't matter whether they're cloud-based or whether they're in my organisation or out. Or if I want to collaborate, or I like the term you use better, which is I just want to work with people, I just want to work together, I can do that.
I often nag you about this collaboration thing, actually.
Totally so. So again, a personal example, my team meeting, the content for the team meeting is on our own area's team site, our personal area's team site, and we co-authored that content in PowerPoint in the same place. So people work on different slides or the same slides at the same time. There's no concept of emailing something around and people aggregating that stuff. So it's a way for me to actually try and articulate the modern productivity needs corporate choices to imply that the infrastructure, the delivery mechanism, the flexibility to allow different types of devices based on use from where you are, and then the right workloads that sit underneath that fit your corporate style.
Has email made a mess of modern productivity?
I think email used badly has made an absolute mess of modern productivity, because I think we have a culture today where if I've mailed you or CC'd you on something, it absolves me from any responsibility for the actual thing that I've mailed you about. And that's just not the case. I mean, if you send somebody a postcard, you wouldn't assume that A, it's going to arrive, and B, that they're going to do something about it. And I don't want to be CC'd on everything that I'm CC'd on, so I have the choice today to say, I'm not interested in that, and I just ignore it. Or I clean up the conversation, as I was talking earlier. So yes, it has, but I would say email used wisely is an invaluable tool for collaboration or to get people to work together more coherently. I think what's a challenge for lots of people in organizations today is email of 7 years ago and working styles of today is a pretty bad combination.
So that's what we've got. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, that's what we've got. And the problem is, Dale, that anyone that's watching this, it takes years to change your culture of working together. If you've got a culture, for example, where everyone's CC'd on every email and we're swamped in emails, that's not going to change overnight. You can't mandate a change on that.
No.
All you can do is try and find the information that's buried in that email.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people use tricks to break some of these sort of cultural problems that do occur around email. Email does get a lot of bad press, but it's not email. Email's just a way of getting a message from A to B, so it's not email per se. It is what you do with it. And you see equally a lot of bad practice around instant messaging and any other communication mechanism. Even the phone, people that insist on telling you their life story before getting to the point when they call you on the phone. These are all just cultural things.
I remember to keep it brief.
Exactly, yeah. Get to the point, Tim. But we've seen people get middle senior managers involved in some of this, and it's a trick that comes through time and time again in lots of our research. Actually, if you're trying to instill a change in people, get the guys who run teams on board first. Someone was talking to me about video conferencing recently, for instance. They wanted to cut their travel budget, so they introduced video conferencing. People weren't using it, so what did they do? They went to the guys who were running teams and got those guys to run their next team meeting as a video conference, not as a... it didn't happen naturally. There had to be a mandate that you should have at least one video conference a month or whatever. And gradually you get the kind of behaviour change. But it doesn't happen overnight, you're right.
So this is on your slide here where you got the sort of driving better consistency and things. There has to be someone doing the driving. These things don't just sort themselves out.
Yeah, I do think there's two pools. I mean, quite often a lot of these projects come about around whether you call it collaboration, workforce optimization, unified communications. They come about because something's not working usually. A sales team is totally underperforming, a customer service horror story has happened where someone's missed something obvious that they should have been aware of and they weren't because communication wasn't working well. These kind of things tend to lead to little inquiries, which is, okay, we need to do something better, guys. And so you have a very specific problem that's defined which needs addressing. The danger is, if you just go and address that problem in isolation, you end up just perpetuating or aggravating what is at the root of a lot of this that we're talking about anyway, which is just fragmentation of one kind or another, fragmentation of systems, disjoints between information processes, all this kind of stuff we've been talking about. So what we're trying to say with this particular slide here is, and IT has got a really important role to play here, which is rather than just solve that problem in isolation, have a think about where you've seen a similar problem before and look at whether or not it's worthwhile pulling some of these things together and actually turning a discrete project into more of a sort of infrastructure investment.
But here's a big question on this. The question is, what are you going to do when the entire business relies on a legacy system that's no longer fit for purpose, is the phrase we use this now. You've built, and some people built very ambitious systems all around this before, and then time moves on, the organisation changes, nature of productivity changes.
So I'll take that first if you like. I really liked Fred's question, so I'm glad we're going to pick that one up. For me, there's there's two things. If it's about a system that's unique to you and you've built for you, that's a different set of challenges from what you're trying to do to make people productive. So if it's something bespoke that you built, you have the choice to change that roadmap and control it to the nth degree. The challenge there is whether you have the budget to do it, I guess. Where I'd like to focus the question is around what makes people productive, or the software that they use to be productive. What can I do there? Well, you've never had more choices than you have today on how you deliver technology. And one of the questions I get the most, I have to say, when I talk to end customers is, well, I don't use anywhere near the amount of capability in the software that I have today. I use 10% of this, or I use 15% of that. And the challenge is, if you put all your users together, that may be true, but it's a different 10% and a different 15% because we all work slightly differently. The choices you have today are one of the biggest hurdles people have in moving forward is you're wholly reliant on your own infrastructure and your own skill base and your own resource base to do that. We have cloud-based services now that are the same as what you deploy on-premise, the same technology, the same code, the same core capabilities, but we keep it current and we keep it moving forward. So you still have to make a choice as an organization: is do you want to invest in being more productive or enabling an infrastructure that makes your users more productive, and the cultural things that you have to embrace that goes with that. But think more broadly around what workloads do I want to manage as an organization, and what do I want managed for me, so that you can focus on delivering the value for you that needs to be. And maybe messaging is a prime example workload. Maybe I don't need to manage that. Maybe I put that to a cloud-based solution that coexists. And more importantly, my user knows no difference. There's an investment equation always with that. The cost of standing still always looks cheaper as opposed to the cost of moving forward. But that's actually the wrong way, in my view, to look at things many times. You have to move forward. Life just moves forward. And far too many organizations now are stuck in a productivity cycle that's 7 to 10 years old, and thinking that the only way they can fix that is doing what they did 7 to 10 years ago, which is a revolution inside their own infrastructure and all the systems that connect to that. You don't have to do that now. You do have choices to say, well, do I consume cloud services or do I do it on premise?
One of the problems around this is, we've been dancing around this a little bit, is that we know what sort of productivity you got now, even if it's not perfect. Difficult to imagine what sort of productivity you got when you make a change. To measure it, put a value on it, things don't get done unless there's a return on it. And productivity is one of those things which doesn't have a return on it.
There are certainly hard costs associated with any productivity change, i.e. if you're moving infrastructure that you manage, physical tin in a physical data center that you provide for, moving it from one location and offloading that service. There's a different cost equation there. But absolutely you're right, Tim. There is a whole cost or ROI perspective around productivity. They're all soft costs. So how do I come up with the ultimate ROI? For me, that's an interesting conversation to stop you doing something. You really do have to analyse, do the fixed costs, the hard costs that I'm going to make savings for as an organisation, coupled to the change I want to make in my organisation, make the investment worthwhile. And you can do some analysis on that, and you can talk to any number of analyst houses that will do the sort of soft cost analysis for you. You can talk to any vendor that will do exactly the same thing, although I'm not sure I would ever equate a vendor solution for that. It's the reality is you have to take that decision for yourself as an organisation.
Yeah, Dale. Dale, you told me you're an organisation that puts numbers on things. Can you put numbers on this?
No, I think it's missing the point quite often, to be honest. You can obviously when you're investing something, your financial director, your financial controller, whoever is accounting the beans, needs a good quantitative business case. How much is it going to cost, and what are we going to get back in return?
You can't tell him he's missing the point.
No, exactly. But if you focus purely on that, I think you're missing the point of a lot of this stuff. Most of the people that have been successful with some of this stuff have been the ones that have actually solved problems that have been in extreme cases, crippling their business. Something just hasn't been working. Yeah. And quite often it comes to the fore when there's been some disaster, some huge misdeal. Why did we lose that deal to that competitor when didn't the salesman know that we've just sold something which is identical to their requirement for a company that these guys are partnering with? Why didn't the sales guy know that? Why did we lose to a competitor with it's just lack of information. Customer service, why did we just lose this customer? Because we screwed up what should have been a very simple inquiry. It just got bogged down in all the miscommunication and everything else, and now they've gone. These kinds of things tend to focus your mind pretty quickly. They're not about what's your return on investment. They're about things that are broken.
That's your kind of down arrow here. This is responding to immediate pain points. And the problem with responding to immediate pain points is one thing gets fixed.
Yep.
But that's a problem then, isn't it? The thing gets fixed, but we haven't made any dent on what we're talking about today, have we? Actually, you've got a graph sort of coming up here about that. Look, we've got all these pain points. Here's a lot of pain points. These are Reg Reader pain points, aren't they?
Yeah, and all this graph is saying, I mean, what this is doing, this is a kind of IT view of where collaboration requirements exist within different departments and functions across the business. And here we're just taking an example. What's that second one?
Customer services.
Customer service. So you've got a problem in customer services. That big customer you just lost because someone screwed something up in terms of an incoming inquiry. How do you fix that? Well, obviously you need to address that, but actually look at the problem, say, okay, what is it that went wrong there? Well, it was miscommunication or an information screw-up or whatever. Okay, where else does that apply? Because the chances are, when you spot problems like that, and we know this for a fact, and people that we've gone and looked at and spoken to who've done successful rollouts of collaboration stuff in one form or another, they've done this. They've said, okay, if we solve this problem here, where else can we have an impact? And then it depends on the culture, and it depends on how visible the problem is in other areas. But actually, it's then you've then made an infrastructure investment which can actually pay back in more than one area. I would say the biggest problem quite often with this is the way budget structures work, because quite often budgets are tied to departments and individual applications or whatever. So to actually transform it from a point investment to an infrastructure investment is easy to say, but
it's difficult.
It is difficult to pull off. But if you can actually logically relate problems in this area to this area to this area, then you can start to make the case with a senior sponsor.
I guess I take your point on this one, Pete, when you were saying before, and you were talking about how sort of cloud affects this. But, when you started on that, I'm thinking, where's it going with this? But I guess one of those things with that is we start talking about common infrastructure that's used across the organisation.
We can. Can I just pick up on one point that was made earlier, which was, how do you deal with when the company is locked into a legacy system? Well, what's interesting is when we go out and we ask people through surveys and sort of project reviews and stuff what they have in place, and you compare that to what is possible now in terms of not just technology but the way technology can be used, there is a huge gulf. Mm-hmm. So the chances are that whatever is in place in terms of legacy, you will be able to find opportunities to add some incremental stuff that they're not even thinking about doing, let alone doing at the moment, that is going to make quite a big impact.
Give me for example on that.
Well, a lot of people who are using legacy document management systems to control information or some kind of legacy email system, you can overlay on top of that unified communications, a more kind of I was going to use the word agile then, but a more kind of lightweight, flexible.
Don't let me cramp your style with my
It's like,
with my looks of disapproval. I understand what you're saying, Pete. Do you think they'd be better off doing that, or do you think they ought to start again sometimes? A big rip and replace to get everything working.
I think the challenge that Dale quite happily alludes to is there is a danger when you try and build everything up to an overseeing, all-arching, let's change the world. Mm-hmm. It becomes such an enormous change and such a huge budget sign-off that there's one outcome. It never happens. Mm-hmm. So you do have to eat the elephant slowly. You really can't throw the world out tomorrow and change everything that you have. But you have to take big enough steps that they're materially useful. And so I think Dale's point of looking across the business and saying, where am I seeing either the best benefit that Project A would fix the most? It really is optimizing for your investments and saying, I am going to get the best return across the business by doing Project A over Project B, and then budgeting for it in that way.
So let's take a really simple example, search.
Yeah.
Finding stuff is a perennial problem in any organisation of any size. If you're going to put some kind of federated search capability in place where you've got a nice little engine there, a nice little interface, and you can tell it what you want, and it will go off to all the data stores behind the scenes and pull it all together for you, you may as well put that in once. And the chances are that it's not just that one department that's hurting here that has that requirement. If you actually go around and investigate, you'll find that there are loads of people who can benefit from that kind of approach. That's a really simple example. Instant messaging. If you poll people around the business, even if you have no instant messaging capability in your network at the moment, you'll find that they're all using instant messaging. They're just not using corporate instant messaging. And so it's actually quite easy to get people on board with those kind of things. If you said, we're going to roll this out properly, it will be properly managed, supported, etc., they're not going to say no because they're already relying on it at a user level. Now, obviously, that you need to get the business buy-in to that as well. So the point is that you can actually identify incremental stuff, which isn't boil the ocean, but does have broader applicability. Does that make sense from your point of view?
It does, and I think the challenge with implementing a project like Search sometimes, and this is something that we've been doing for some considerable time, is it very often relies on some infrastructure underneath that's not there, and that turns into a slightly bigger project, and then we have a cascade. You have to work out what the basis of a starting point is. What are the 3 things I need to change in my organisation to mean that I can start to build forward and stop hitting these hurdles? Identity and infrastructure is certainly one of those. Search overlays on that beautifully. And then it's not just searching to find documents, it's searching to find expertise or people in general. You can search for many different things. Search integrated into line of business systems. So it does make sense to me. An interesting question that's just come in is that for me that kind of talks to this, which is so I think it's here from David. I've been tasked with helping our global sales team operate more productively. Where do I start? They're in Europe, 300 strong and half mobile and half office based. So my starting point is, don't do something different for the mobile workers to the office based workers. That will drive you down a path where you have differing capabilities. Do things that enable you to provide the same set of services and performance to the office-based staff and to the mobile workers. So choose a platform, choose a set of solutions that enable you to do that.
It's like Dale's thing to bring it above the departmental level.
Exactly
if
that.
Can.
Now, we've got work styles there. If people are mobile and half that workforce is mobile, if they're working on a phone device or a handheld device, or they're always working across a broadband network, they're never in an office, that shouldn't stop them having the same benefit of systems, tools and services that the people in the office have. It may have a performance impact, so you want to smartly make sure you provide them the information in the most efficient way, but don't do something different for the different audiences. Make sure you do a common infrastructure.
Yeah, I think the thing is, with that specific kind of problem, for instance, one of the things that works really well is to think about how your systems can be a lot more proactive. So if something happens here, if it's a field sales guy does something and there's an inside sales guy working on the same account, then you want that inside sales guy to be alerted, and vice versa. So the important thing is not this guy gets alerted through his browser, this guy gets alerted through an SMS or some other mechanism on their smartphone. It's that you've got that alerting in the network somewhere. And that kind of capability, moving from expecting people to think and proactively go and look for something to the system delivering it without them even asking, there's a huge transformation that goes on in terms of productivity when you take that kind of move. People don't miss things, they react to things much more quickly, they don't screw up incoming calls, they don't miss opportunities.
A lot of engineering at the back end of that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, though, for me, really simple soundbite, but have a clear goal of what you're trying to aim towards. I think, for interesting, a pharmaceutical company spoke to me. I spoke to them a couple of years ago, and I had a really simple task to solve for them, which is give me an infrastructure that gives me 1 day over my competition to patent a drug. Okay, so provide me an infrastructure that does that. So a very simple top-level umbrella statement with a lot of work underneath that to actually say, well, how can we make you the most efficient in this particular process? Have a goal that you're solving for. I think David's goal is a really good and clear goal to have, which is how do I serve mobile users and office-based users in the most appropriate way? Work out for what, and then implement a solution.
Solve a problem, don't solve every problem.
But yeah, absolutely. Can I just say something which we kind of hinted at, and we've been saying it without really saying it, and that's that this stuff isn't easy. There is no sort of plug something in, switch it on, and it's fixed. I mean, in the case of, and the other thing, just to circle back to something that was mentioned earlier on, it is just so important to have the business stakeholders involved and defining the problem. In the case of sales, for instance, I mean, what is the problem? Is it that the sales teams are not winning enough business? Is that about conversion rates on incoming leads? Or is it cost of sale? Is it that they're getting the business, but it's actually costing them an arm and a leg? Those are two quite different things, and it might be both. I mean, but you need to define those. You can't define them as an IT person. That needs to be defined by the business guys.
Well, in the time we've got left, Pete, you brought in some of your customers here in a show and tell sort of style. So, you know, and these guys that defined a problem and, you know, well, in this way that they solved it. Can you take us through a couple of them? We've got a few minutes for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the FA, an organisation hopefully most of us know, but don't know as a technical organisation or an organisation built around technology. They came to us trying to solve a very specific problem, which is it takes us 7 to 10 days to solve or to adjudicate for an on or off pitch incident that they're responsible for adjudicating for. So a red card, a yellow card, or an incident in the ground somewhere happens. The FA has to take a tape that the TV company today produces, copy that, send that round to all of the stakeholders to make the decision, and 10 days later they are able to start to make that decision process. So they came to us with that problem.
It wouldn't be very good news on goal line technology, would it? I mean, there's matches last a year.
Exactly, and you consider now how quickly we can make a choice around a refereeing decision now with instant replay and media. The two are kind of incongruous. So the solution was pretty straightforward, is put in a collaboration infrastructure, a SharePoint infrastructure is what they put in place. And they have now put out a pilot to a number of Premier and lower division clubs to say, right, okay, here's where the footage will be. It will be there within a certain number of minutes or hours afterwards. Here is the decision process. So they've taken a 7 to 10 day process down to a decision to take within 1 day. So, and a really simple process. Now they have that infrastructure in place, which was put in place for one purpose. They can now use it for working together more smartly and doing things in a more collaborative environment with each other. So it was designed for one purpose, but the benefit, the side benefit, is much wider than that, and that was always the goal. Aviva, another simple example. Aviva, a brand bringing together many brands from Norwich Union and others that it acquired. So lots of different infrastructure. A real challenge for organisations that grow through acquisition. How do I bring together systems quickly and efficiently? They had 6 corporate intranets. And the problem they needed to solve was, how do I quickly, within 150 days, have one intranet for the new brand that everyone could go to? It was going to take 1.5 years to do on-premise. We did it in 142 days in a cloud-based solution. So that's where, you know, cloud isn't a panacea, it's just a different delivery mechanism. But it meant that they didn't have to change their world wholly, they could actually do it simply.
So they didn't have to buy new kit, basically, and go through that whole procurement thing.
Exactly that. There's the infrastructure's already there, scalable and for everybody to use. So they were able to spin that environment up for them. Sky customer services was something that Dale pulled up earlier. Mail, just managing mailbox and mailbox overload was causing Sky's customer services team, 20,000 people that work in their customer services environment. They were spending an hour or two a day just sorting their mailbox out, which meant they weren't answering phones. So putting in place a modern messaging environment with a sensible storage infrastructure based on modern exchange technology gave them the ability to give give customer service time back, and therefore customer service stats improve. So a really simple way of doing that. And BMW, from a unified communications perspective, they have something along the lines of 24 production environments over 13 different countries, and they need people to be able to collaborate quickly to make decisions. They implemented Instant Messenger, Office Communication Server from Microsoft, now called Link, to enable them to do that, so they can now be more efficient and make decisions more agilely. So all organizations trying to do different things, but the same problem is pervasive across all of them. They need their people to be more efficient, or to give them time back to do their core job, not manage their technology.
What they all have in common, just from listening to you, is this principle of you've got an immediate problem at hand, but in solving that problem you've actually generated a broader set of payback. And I think that's a principle to bear in mind. And that, it's hard, but that's what IT sometimes needs to educate business stakeholders on when it comes to these kind of investments.
I guess one principle that goes through, well, several of those anyway, is that idea, instead of having a problem that you pass around from place to place, stick the problem somewhere and let people come to it.
Yep.
And contribute to it. And that seems to be something, a way of working that seems to be in the wiki world that's kind of taking over, isn't it? That's a foundation of productivity. Is that a fad, or is that going to stay with us?
For me, I don't see that's going. I don't see that's going anywhere. People will always embrace new ways of interacting with each other, and some bad practices, working practices, will come out of that, and some good working practices will come out of that. No doubt that means the analyst community, are systems integrators and vendors all have a job for a considerably long time because of that. But the reality is we have to work together as I guess stakeholders in the movement of this industry to help people get the best from things. John's question that he asked is, it's great talking about this stuff for enterprises. Does that work for 5 to 10 person companies? It does too. You just have to scale back what it is you're trying to achieve. And now cloud-based services, coming back to that, offer exactly the same features and functions to an organization of one person that they do to an organization of 100,000. So just think about the tools that you're going to use, and you just consume them a different way. Don't worry about keeping it current.
Dale, we're nearly out of time. Dale, just close us on this one. My question to you is, can it ever replace actually sitting down around a table and talking to each other? Really, has that still got a role to play?
Yeah, of course it has. Yeah. I think sometimes the technology, the communication, all this instant stuff just gets in the way, doesn't it? So closing the laptop lid, switching off the smartphone, getting around a table, getting a flip chart whiteboard going, using your notepad, all these kind of things that, that's not going to go away. It's about people at the end of the day, isn't it? It's not about technology.
All right, well, with that, it's time for us to close our laptop lids. They are actually real laptops. They're not. That was just that was just like a joke thing that I was doing there. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, sort of Pete. Thank you very much, especially because you do the questions and the answers. So so that makes me look more productive. And Dale, thanks as always for your contribution. Thank you very much for your questions. Give us your feedback afterwards. Download the deck. Give us your comments, and there will also be, well, you might already be watching the on-demand of this, so you don't need for me to tell you that, but there'll also be this that you can sort of provide to people so that they'll give you budget so you can sort out some of these problems that have been with you forever. Tune in for our next Regcast, which is coming soon. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you did. I've been Tim Phillips. Goodbye.